The story follows Jamal Carter, a young black man and recent graduate from a prestigious university in the United States. With high hopes for finding a good job to support his family and build a better life, he embarks on a grueling job search. Despite his qualifications and skills, he faces hidden barriers and subtle discrimination due to his race. As he endures countless rejections, Jamal begins to question his self-worth, struggling with feelings of frustration, inadequacy, and at times, anger. Jamal Carter had always been a high achiever. His family cheered the day he graduated from one of the top universities in the country. Jamal was a first-generation college graduate, and his parents had sacrificed so much to give him a chance to escape the cycle of poverty that had trapped his community for generations. Armed with a degree in business and a resume filled with internships, leadership roles, and glowing recommendations, he felt ready to step into the corporate world and make his mark. As he sat in his small apartment, meticulously sending out applications and cover letters to every job posting he found, he felt a quiet excitement stirring inside him. He dreamed of the day he'd walk through the doors of a gleaming office, dressed in a well-fitted suit, a picture of success. But as the weeks turned into months, the excitement turned to confusion. Each rejection email felt like a blow, a reminder that his achievements didn't seem to be enough. At first, he thought it was just the tough job market. But then he started to notice a pattern. He'd reached the final interview stages, where they'd ask him probing questions about his background, subtly hinting at his upbringing or asking how he'd fit into the company culture. Some recruiters would praise his experience and then say they'd go in another direction, without a clear reason. Jamal's mind raced with doubt. What am I doing wrong? Is it my resume, or is there something about me that doesn't fit? The question of fit lingered in his thoughts, gnawing at him. As rejections piled up, Jamal tried to keep his spirits high. He reassured himself, it's just a matter of time. Someone will see my potential. But the weight of silence grew heavier with each unanswered application and each dismissive, "We'll get back to you." Jamal's confidence wavered every time he walked into an interview room. He'd often be the only black candidate in the waiting area, surrounded by other applicants who seemed to walk into these rooms with an ease he could only envy. They chatted casually with receptionists and each other, while Jamal sat alone, rehearsing his answers, trying to make sure he seemed professional enough and easygoing enough. He started to question every part of himself, his posture, his tone, even his name. Would they think differently of me if my name wasn't Jamal? He wondered. He knew his name carried a certain weight, a perception he couldn't control. Every rejection felt more personal, as though they weren't just rejecting his resume but rejecting who he was entirely. The self-doubt turned to frustration, simmering quietly beneath his polite responses and well-practiced interview answers. He began noticing the subtle shifts in tone and posture whenever he introduced himself. The look in a hiring manager's eyes that softened when speaking to others but became guarded when addressing him. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was being seen as a risk rather than an asset. One evening, Jamal stared at the city lights through his apartment window, feeling the distance between him and the life he wanted grow wider. He had done everything right, yet the doors remained shut. The anger and helplessness welled up, but he pushed them down, telling himself to stay positive. But the silent walls around him felt like they were closing in. After months of rejections, Jamal finally received an invitation for an interview with a major company. It was a role he had dreamed about, offering stability, benefits, and a chance to grow. He meticulously prepared, studying every detail about the company and practicing his responses until he could recite them in his sleep. The interview was with Danielle, a senior hiring manager. She was warm and engaged, asking Jamal about his background, his family, and his ambitions. For the first time in a long time, he felt like he was being seen as a person, not just a candidate. When she asked about his career goals, Jamal felt a surge of hope. He answered confidently, sharing his dreams of rising through the company, contributing to meaningful projects, and being part of a team. Danielle smiled, jotting down notes. "You're clearly very qualified, Jamal. We'll be in touch soon. Leaving the office, he felt lighter. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to imagine that he might actually get the job. But as the days passed, the silence returned. Weeks went by with no word from Danielle or the company. Jamal sent polite follow-ups, only to receive automated responses. His hope crumbled, replaced by a familiar bitterness. It was a painful reminder of the countless, "we'll be in touch," promises that had led to nothing. Jamal's patience wore thin. His savings were running out, and the stress of financial insecurity pressed on him. He began to resent the system that had promised him opportunity if he just worked hard enough. He had done everything right, yet he felt locked out, invisible, reduced to a statistic. One night, after yet another rejection, Jamal's frustration erupted. He slammed his laptop shut, the silence of his apartment broken by the sharp sound. "What do they want from me?" he muttered. He felt foolish for ever believing he could break through the walls built around him. He thought of his family, of his mother's proud smile on graduation day. He remembered the long hours he spent studying, the sacrifices they made. His anger wasn't just for himself, it was for everyone who had worked so hard only to be denied the same opportunities that seemed easily handed to others. Jamal knew he couldn't let this bitterness consume him. Yet, the weight of his experience left a scar. He wondered how many others felt this silent burden, carrying their potential yet constantly doubted. In the days that followed, Jamal found solace in the small moments, calling his mother, meeting up with old friends, and reconnecting with his community. One of his friends, Malik, had gone through a similar struggle and had finally found a stable job after years of freelancing. Malik offered Jamal a listening ear, but more than that, he offered him hope. Over coffee one day, Malik shared his own frustrations and challenges. "Man, you know they didn't want me in that office at first. I had to work twice as hard just to prove I deserved a seat at the table," Malik said, his voice steady but laced with quiet resilience. "They're not ready for us, but that doesn't mean we don't belong there." Jamal felt a weight lift from his chest. Malik's words were a reminder that he wasn't alone in this fight. It wasn't just him, there were others who had faced similar rejections, similar doubts, but who had still managed to carve out a place for themselves. Jamal left that conversation feeling a renewed sense of purpose. Determined to stay proactive, he joined a local networking group for Black professionals. The group was small but supportive, filled with people who knew the struggle, who shared tips, contacts, and, most importantly, encouragement. It was through this group that Jamal finally landed a job interview at a tech startup led by a Black CEO, someone who not only understood Jamal's struggle but actively sought out diverse talent. Walking into the startup's modest office, Jamal felt a different energy. The space was humble, with mismatched chairs and worn carpets, but there was an unspoken ease among the team members, many of whom were Black or from other marginalized backgrounds. It was refreshing to see people who looked like him in roles of leadership and influence. The CEO, Marcus, welcomed Jamal with a warm handshake and a genuine smile. During their interview, Marcus didn't question Jamal's fit or make assumptions about his background. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions about Jamal's skills and vision. For the first time, Jamal felt valued for what he could bring to the table, rather than judged by factors outside his control. After the interview, Marcus said, "I've been where you are, Jamal. I know it's not easy, but I built this company for people like us, who have the talent but rarely get the chance. If you're ready to work hard, there's a place for you here." Jamal was overwhelmed with gratitude. Here was someone who saw him, really saw him, and was willing to give him a fair shot. It wasn't a corporate skyscraper or a fancy title, but it was an opportunity, a real one. As Jamal settled into his new role, he found himself thriving in the supportive environment. He had a mentor in Marcus, colleagues who respected him, and work that challenged him. But despite his gratitude, the scars from his job search journey lingered. He couldn't forget the silent rejections, the times he had been made to feel inadequate simply for being himself. There were moments when he felt that bitterness rise again, especially when he heard stories of friends facing similar struggles. But instead of letting it consume him, Jamal decided to channel it into something positive. He started mentoring young people in his community, sharing his story and offering guidance to those navigating similar paths. One evening, he met with a young high school student named Kendra who was filled with dreams but plagued by self-doubt. "How do you keep going when everything seems stacked against you?" she asked, her voice trembling. Jamal thought for a moment. "It's not easy, Kendra. There are days you'll feel like giving up. But remember, your worth isn't defined by their rejection. You have something valuable to offer, and there are people out there who will see it. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." He could see a spark in her eyes, a glimmer of hope that reminded him of his own journey. And in that moment, Jamal realized that his struggle had given him more than just a job, it had given him a purpose. His experiences had shaped him, scarred him, but they had also made him resilient, compassionate, and determined to change the narrative for others like him. Jamal knew that the journey was far from over, that the barriers he had faced were part of a much larger system. But he also knew that his story was only beginning. With each young person he mentored, with every conversation that chipped away at the stereotypes and prejudices, he felt a quiet strength growing within him. He had found his place, not just in the office but in the community, fighting to create a world where people like him could walk into any room and be seen for their potential, not their race. And while he couldn't rewrite the past, he could help shape a future where the doors stayed open for the next generation, where they wouldn't have to carry the weight he had once borne alone. As the weeks passed in a blur of applications and interviews, Jamal began to feel the strain in ways he hadn't expected. The initial optimism he'd once felt had been whittled down, replaced by an unshakable tension that weighed him down, even in moments of rest. Each new rejection stung deeper than the last, leaving him with a lingering sense of failure he couldn't shake. One night, his mother called. Her voice, warm but laced with concern, instantly made Jamal feel guilty. He hadn't been home in weeks, isolating himself as he threw everything into the job search. "Jamal, honey," she began, "I know you're working hard, but don't let this take everything from you. You've got to rest too." Her words were gentle, but he could hear the worry in her tone. Jamal sighed, pressing his fingers to his temples. "I know, Mom. It's just, it feels like I'm running in place. Like no matter what I do, it's never enough." She paused, and he could picture her sitting in her favorite chair, fidgeting with the edge of her apron. "You're more than enough, Jamal. Don't let them make you think otherwise. You have always been enough." But as comforting as his mother's words were, they didn't lift the dark cloud that had settled over him. He hung up, feeling the pressure of expectations, not just his mother's, but his own. He'd always prided himself on being strong, pushing through any challenge, but this struggle was different. It was silent, invisible, and relentless, like a tide that kept pulling him under. As Jamal's isolation deepened, it started to affect his friendships. His best friend, Terrell, had been calling regularly, trying to check in. At first, Jamal had appreciated the concern, but soon, every well-meaning question about his job search began to feel like a reminder of his failures. So he began avoiding Terrell's calls, burying himself in the never-ending cycle of applications and cover letters instead. One Saturday afternoon, Terrell showed up unannounced. Jamal opened the door, startled, and his friend's familiar grin greeted him, though it quickly turned serious when he saw Jamal's face. "Man, you look like you haven't slept in days," Terrell said, crossing his arms. "What's going on with you? You've been ghosting me." Jamal looked away, unable to meet his friend's gaze. "I'm just busy, man. There's a lot going on." "Yeah, I know, but you don't have to go through this alone," Terrell replied, his tone softening. "We've been through everything together since middle school. You think I'd leave you now?" Jamal finally looked up, the weight of his emotions spilling over. "It's just, every time I get close, it falls apart. And I can't help but feel like it's because of this," he said, gesturing to his skin. I'm doing everything right, Terrell, but it feels like it doesn't matter. They look at me and see a risk, not an asset. Terrell nodded, his expression somber. I get it, Jamal. I know the feeling. But that's exactly why you can't let them break you. We've got to keep pushing, even when it feels impossible. For the first time in weeks, Jamal felt a flicker of relief. Terrell's understanding, his shared experience, made Jamal feel less alone in the struggle. The two friends sat in silence for a while, each lost in their thoughts but comforted by the unspoken bond they shared. Despite Terrell's encouragement, Jamal's struggle continued to take its toll. He noticed he was growing irritable, snapping at people over small things, his patience fraying as his frustrations mounted. One evening, after a particularly brutal rejection from a job he had desperately wanted, he found himself staring at his reflection, feeling a wave of anger he could barely contain. The voice in his head was relentless. Why do you keep trying, Jamal? Why do you keep putting yourself through this? He felt trapped, crushed under the weight of a society that seemed determined to keep him on the outside. Every part of him wanted to fight, but his spirit felt worn, his drive flickering like a flame struggling against a fierce wind. To cope, he started running at night, pounding the pavement until his legs burned and his mind cleared. The physical exhaustion brought a strange comfort, dulling the sharp edges of his disappointment. But he knew he couldn't keep running forever. The anger, the exhaustion, and the self-doubt, these were things he'd eventually have to face head-on. One morning, an unexpected email appeared in Jamal's inbox. It was from Deborah, a senior executive at a non-profit organization focused on advancing equality in the workforce. She had heard about Jamal's job search through mutual contacts and was reaching out with an offer for an informational interview. Reading her message, Jamal felt a mix of hope and caution. He had been down this road before, only to be met with empty promises. But something about Deborah's words seemed genuine, and he decided to give it a chance. The interview took place at a small, unassuming coffee shop. Deborah was kind, attentive, and transparent, listening intently as Jamal shared his experiences. She nodded thoughtfully, her expression serious as he spoke about the subtle but pervasive biases he'd faced. I won't pretend I know exactly what you've gone through, Jamal, she said finally. But I want to help, in any way I can. We need people like you, people who've seen this system from the inside and have the courage to speak out. If you're interested, I'd like to offer you a position with us. It won't be easy, but you'll have a voice here. Jamal sat there, stunned, his mind reeling. It wasn't the corporate role he had initially envisioned, but it was an opportunity, one that felt meaningful. For the first time, he felt like he could be part of a team that valued his experience, that didn't see him as a risk but as a force for change. With this new path opening before him, Jamal stood at a crossroads. He knew that accepting Deborah's offer would mean leaving behind certain dreams, but it would also mean embracing a new purpose, one that could make a difference, not just for him, but for others who shared his journey. Starting his new job at the nonprofit felt like a fresh beginning for Jamal. Deborah, his new boss, was both encouraging and direct. We're a small team, but we're fighting for big changes, she said on his first day, handing him a stack of files. And that means we're counting on you to bring your perspective, your passion, and your resilience. This work can be hard, but it's necessary. Jamal felt the weight of her words, and for the first time, he felt like his experiences were seen as strengths rather than liabilities. He settled into his desk, feeling both excitement and a tinge of anxiety. The work he was stepping into was different from the corporate world he had once aspired to, but there was a sense of purpose here that stirred something in him. Within the first few weeks, Jamal learned that working at the nonprofit was no less intense than the corporate world. It was fast-paced, with tight budgets, and they were constantly pushing to gain funding for their programs. He was tasked with coordinating community outreach events and gathering data to support their campaigns for workplace equity. It wasn't always glamorous work, and he quickly realized just how much was riding on the efforts of every team member. One day, during a strategy meeting, Jamal spoke up about an idea he had for an outreach project aimed at connecting with black college students. The room went quiet, and he worried for a moment that he had overstepped. But then Deborah nodded thoughtfully. "That's an interesting approach," she said. "Let's give it a shot." The project was a hit. Students responded eagerly, attending their workshops and reaching out for advice. Jamal felt a deep sense of accomplishment. He was doing work that mattered, not just to him, but to his community. And yet, as fulfilling as it was, he knew this was only the beginning. One day, Jamal received an email from a colleague in a partnering organization, a well-established group focused on workplace inclusivity. The message, seemingly polite, struck a nerve with Jamal. It was full of coded language, subtle suggestions that seemed to doubt the legitimacy of his nonprofit's work. He brought up his concerns with Deborah. She listened patiently before saying, "We face this all the time, Jamal. Some people can't see beyond their own ideas of progress. But that's exactly why we do what we do. Don't let their skepticism shake you." Jamal took her words to heart, but the experience left him feeling unsettled. Even within spaces dedicated to equity, bias still crept in. This wasn't a corporate office, but the subtle barriers remained. That evening, he went for a long walk, mulling over what Deborah had said. He realized that if he wanted to make a lasting impact, he'd have to develop resilience, not just against external biases, but also against the creeping self-doubt these experiences stirred up within him. As his work progressed, Jamal found himself connecting with other young professionals in his network. They shared stories, frustrations, and victories, supporting each other in a way he had never experienced in his job search days. This community became a lifeline, a place where he could be vulnerable and share his aspirations without fear of judgment. He started hosting informal gatherings with his friends and colleagues, creating a space where they could speak openly about their challenges. It was during one of these gatherings that he met Aisha, a fellow advocate who had been working to improve diversity within tech companies. Aisha's passion and sharp insights inspired him, and they quickly formed a bond, trading ideas and supporting each other's work. Through Aisha, Jamal began to see the power of collaboration. Together, they organized events and panels, focusing on how professionals of color could thrive in spaces that weren't designed with them in mind. Each event brought in more people, and slowly, Jamal began to see the impact of his efforts ripple through his community. One evening, after a particularly powerful event on advocating for workplace rights, Deborah called Jamal into her office. Her expression was thoughtful, her eyes soft but focused. "Jamal," she began, "the work you're doing here has been incredible. You've brought fresh energy and dedication that this team needed. But I want to make sure you're also taking care of yourself." Jamal was taken aback. "I'm fine, Deborah. This work, it's everything I wanted." She nodded. "I know. But remember, this isn't just about changing the world. It's about sustaining yourself too. Burnout is real, especially in this field." Her words resonated with him, and for the first time, he admitted to himself just how tired he was. He had been pushing so hard, trying to prove himself, that he hadn't stopped to consider his own needs. He was deeply grateful for Deborah's support, but he also knew that his work was only just beginning. The more he did, the more he felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. That night, he sat with his thoughts, reflecting on the journey so far. The fire within him was still strong, but he realized he'd need to pace himself, to build resilience not only in his work but within himself. As the weeks passed, Jamal began to find a balance between his passion for the work and his need for personal well-being. He took Deborah's advice to heart, carving out time for himself in the evenings, setting boundaries with his work, and reconnecting with his family. Yet, despite his best efforts, he couldn't shake the feeling of being pulled in two directions, between his desire to make a difference and his own need for stability. One night, Jamal called Terrell. They hadn't talked in a while, and Jamal missed their late-night conversations. "Man, I'm trying to make things better for us, you know." Jamal said, his voice soft. But some days, it feels like I'm barely making a dent. Terrell listened quietly before speaking. Jamal, don't forget, you're already making a difference. You're helping people see what's possible, just by being where you are. But remember, this is a marathon, not a sprint. Take care of yourself too. Jamal took a deep breath, letting his friend's words sink in. He knew Terrell was right, he just needed to find a way to believe it. As Jamal continued his work with the nonprofit, he encountered a new challenge, resistance from within his own community. He had always believed that his advocacy would be welcomed, but he soon discovered that not everyone saw things the same way. Some people, especially older members of the community, felt that Jamal's approach was too bold, too confrontational. One evening, after a panel discussion on workplace equality, an older man approached Jamal. "Son, I respect what you're doing, but you have to understand, it's not always about fighting. Sometimes, you need to keep your head down and work within the system. That's how we've survived this long." Jamal felt a surge of frustration, but he kept his tone respectful. "I understand that, sir. But some things won't change unless we speak up. If we don't push, we'll always be waiting for a chance that may never come." The man nodded, his face contemplative. "Maybe so. But remember, every push has a cost. Be sure you're ready to pay it." The encounter left Jamal feeling conflicted. He respected the man's experience, but he couldn't ignore the urge to push forward. He wondered if he was being naive, or if he was onto something that others couldn't yet see. As his role in the nonprofit grew, so did the responsibilities. Jamal was soon entrusted with managing larger projects and was even invited to speak at a conference on workplace diversity. It was a huge opportunity, and he felt a mixture of pride and pressure. The night before the conference, Deborah stopped by his office. "You've come a long way, Jamal," she said, a smile in her eyes. "This isn't just about the work you're doing here. It's about the impact you're making, inspiring others to see what's possible." Her words filled him with a renewed sense of purpose, but they also heightened the weight he felt. As he walked onto the stage the next day, he looked out at the crowd, his heart pounding. He was no longer just Jamal, he was a representative for his community, for the young people who looked up to him. The responsibility was both empowering and overwhelming. Taking a deep breath, he began his speech, sharing not only the challenges he had faced but also his vision for a more inclusive workforce. The audience listened intently, and for the first time, Jamal felt that his voice was truly being heard. After the conference, Jamal received an outpouring of support, but he also encountered criticism. Some argued that his approach was too idealistic, that he wasn't addressing the realities of the workforce. Others questioned his qualifications, dismissing him as just another young activist. The criticism hit harder than he expected. He tried to brush it off, telling himself that not everyone would understand his perspective, but the doubts lingered. Was he truly making a difference, or was he just creating noise? One night, Aisha called him. "I saw the comments," she said gently. "Don't let them get to you. Change always comes with resistance. If you're upsetting people, it means you're challenging something that needs to be changed." Jamal nodded, feeling a spark of reassurance. "Thanks, Aisha. I just didn't expect it to feel this heavy." Aisha laughed softly. "It is heavy. But that's why we're in this together. Keep pushing, Jamal. You're doing important work." Her words stayed with him, and he felt a renewed sense of determination. He wasn't in this alone, and he was prepared to keep going, no matter the cost. Jamal's journey had brought him a long way, but it also made him question what truly mattered to him. One weekend, while visiting his family, he sat down with his mother. She had always been his anchor, the one who kept him grounded, and he found himself opening up about his struggles. "Mom, sometimes I wonder if I'm doing the right thing. I wanted to make a difference, but I didn't think it would be this hard." His mother placed a hand on his shoulder, her eyes filled with understanding. Jamal, you were always meant to do great things. But greatness doesn't come easy. It comes with sacrifice, with resilience. Whatever path you choose, remember that it's the journey, not just the destination, that defines you. Her words brought him a sense of clarity. He realized that he didn't have to have all the answers right now. All he needed was the courage to keep moving forward, to face each challenge with the same strength and determination that had brought him this far. With a renewed sense of clarity, Jamal dove back into his work, determined to embrace both the challenges and the victories that lay ahead. He decided to use the criticism he had faced as fuel rather than an anchor. At the next team meeting, he proposed a bold idea, a community-driven campaign to gather stories from individuals who had faced discrimination in the workplace. He believed that personal narratives could be powerful tools for advocacy. Let's highlight real experiences, he suggested, his voice steady. We can create a platform where people can share their stories, and in doing so, educate employers on the real impacts of bias. Deborah looked impressed. That's a strong direction, Jamal. It gives people a voice and puts a human face to the statistics we often use. I love it. As they began to plan the campaign, Jamal felt a sense of purpose rekindling within him. He reached out to his network, inviting individuals from different backgrounds to share their stories. What surprised him was the willingness of people to open up, to be vulnerable. It was a reminder that everyone had a narrative worth telling, and those stories could collectively foster change. After several weeks of planning, the campaign launched with an online event that featured personal testimonies from participants. As the stories poured in, Jamal felt an overwhelming sense of solidarity. Each narrative was unique, yet they all echoed a common thread, the struggle against discrimination and the desire for equity. During the event, Jamal spoke passionately about the importance of listening to these stories. Every voice matters, he said, standing in front of a virtual audience. Change begins when we recognize the humanity in one another. These stories are not just statistics, they are our friends, our family, our community. The response was heartwarming. Comments flooded in, expressing gratitude for the stories shared. Jamal watched as the campaign grew, gaining traction across social media. It felt like a turning point, not just for him but for the entire movement. They were creating a community of advocates who were willing to confront uncomfortable truths together. Despite the success of the campaign, Jamal soon faced a setback. A prominent news outlet contacted him for an interview, wanting to feature the campaign and Jamal's vision. Excited, he agreed, thinking it would elevate their message even further. However, when the interview aired, it focused more on sensationalism than substance. The interviewer framed Jamal's comments to portray a narrative of division rather than unity, and the backlash was swift. Critics seized on the misrepresentation, questioning his motives and suggesting that he was fueling resentment rather than fostering change. Jamal felt crushed. After all the hard work, it seemed like everything was being twisted and turned against him. He received messages from supporters, but also from those who felt betrayed, thinking he had misled them. That evening, he confided in Aisha. I thought this was a chance to amplify our voices, but now it feels like a nightmare. They're saying I'm the problem, not the solution. Don't lose sight of why you started this, Jamal, Aisha said. You can't control how the media portrays you, but you can control your response. This is a setback, but it doesn't define your mission. Taking Aisha's words to heart, Jamal took a step back to regroup. Instead of letting the negativity consume him, he decided to confront it head-on. He organized a follow-up event, inviting community members to share their thoughts about the misrepresentation and the importance of media literacy in activism. During the event, Jamal encouraged attendees to share their feelings about the coverage, allowing for an open discussion about the challenges activists face when trying to get their messages out. We must hold ourselves accountable, but we must also hold the media accountable, he said, looking around the room filled with passionate faces. Our narratives deserve to be told authentically. The turnout exceeded his expectations, and the conversation sparked a renewed energy within the community. People began to rally around the campaign again, using the experience as a learning opportunity rather than a defeat. As the campaign continued to gain traction, Jamal realized the importance of fostering connections with other organizations. He reached out to businesses and community leaders, seeking partnerships that could amplify their efforts. He proposed a series of workshops aimed at educating employers about unconscious bias and the importance of diversity in the workplace. To his surprise, several local companies agreed to participate, eager to learn and engage with the community. During the first workshop, Jamal shared personal stories alongside data, creating an emotional connection that resonated deeply with the attendees. "It's easy to ignore statistics when they're just numbers on a page," he said, standing in front of a room filled with business leaders. "But when you hear the voices behind those numbers, it becomes personal. It becomes real." The response was overwhelmingly positive. Many attendees expressed gratitude for the opportunity to learn, and several committed to implementing new policies that would support diversity within their companies. As the campaign matured, Jamal found himself reflecting on his journey. He had come a long way from the frustration and isolation he had once felt. Now, surrounded by a community that was invested in change, he could see the impact of their collective efforts. One evening, he and Aisha sat together, reminiscing about their first conversations and how far they had come. "Can you believe we're actually doing this?" Aisha said, a smile spreading across her face. "It's incredible," Jamal replied. "But it's also just the beginning. There's still so much work to do." "True," Aisha said thoughtfully. "But we're building something meaningful here, and we're not alone. We have each other, and we have this community." As they sat in comfortable silence, Jamal felt a profound sense of gratitude. He understood that while the challenges would continue, the support and connections they were building would be crucial in navigating the road ahead. With each passing day, Jamal's confidence grew. The campaign's success had empowered him to dream bigger. He started brainstorming ideas for a mentorship program aimed at supporting young professionals of color, helping them navigate the complexities of the workforce. One afternoon, he gathered his team to discuss his vision. "I want to create a space where young people can connect with mentors who look like them, who understand their struggles. We need to invest in the next generation," he said, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. Deborah nodded in approval. "That's a fantastic idea, Jamal. Let's work on developing a plan to make it happen. This could be a game changer for so many." As the team brainstormed, Jamal felt a surge of hope. He realized that while the fight for equity was ongoing, there were also opportunities to create lasting change. With the mentorship program officially greenlit, Jamal was filled with a renewed sense of purpose. He set up meetings with potential mentors and community leaders, eager to create a network that would provide guidance and support to aspiring professionals. It was a challenging task, but Jamal was determined to build something meaningful. He reached out to Aisha, who was equally passionate about the idea. "I think we should host an event to kick off the program," she suggested. "A place where ments can meet mentors, share their stories, and form connections." Jamal nodded enthusiastically. "Absolutely. We can make it a community celebration, showcasing success stories and creating a space for networking." As they began planning the event, they decided to involve local schools and universities, spreading the word to students who could benefit from the program. The more they talked about it, the more excited they became about the potential impact it could have. The day of the mentorship program launch finally arrived, and Jamal felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. They had transformed a local community center into a vibrant space filled with energy and anticipation. Colorful banners adorned the walls, and tables were set up for mentoring sessions. As attendees began to arrive, Jamal took a moment to step back and soak it all in. Young professionals mingled with experienced mentors, laughter and conversation filling the room. Jamal felt a swell of pride as he watched people connecting and exchanging ideas. During the opening remarks, he took the stage, his heart racing. "Thank you all for being here today. This program is a testament to what we can achieve together. We're not just building connections, we're building futures. The audience erupted in applause, and Jamal felt a wave of encouragement wash over him. This was what it meant to create change, bringing people together, sharing experiences, and fostering growth. As the event unfolded, Jamal moved through the crowd, witnessing moments of genuine connection. He saw a young woman, Maria, nervously introduce herself to a seasoned executive, who instantly put her at ease with a warm smile and a firm handshake. Nearby, a group of students gathered around a mentor, eagerly asking questions about career paths and opportunities. Later in the day, Jamal took a moment to chat with some of the participants. Maria approached him, her face lit up with excitement. "I just had the best conversation with Mr. Thompson. He shared his journey and gave me advice on my resume. I feel so inspired." "That's fantastic, Maria," Jamal replied, his heart swelling with joy. "This is what it's all about, connecting and learning from each other." As he moved through the crowd, he realized that this was not just an event, it was a community in the making. People were sharing their hopes and dreams, and for many, it was the first time they felt seen and heard. Just as the event was nearing its end, Jamal received an urgent call from Deborah. "Jamal, we need to talk. There's been some pushback from a few community members about the mentorship program. They're concerned it may favor certain individuals over others." Jamal felt a knot tighten in his stomach. "What do you mean?" "There are voices questioning whether we're truly inclusive. We need to address their concerns before they escalate." Jamal took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. "I understand. Let's set up a community forum to address these concerns head-on. We can invite everyone to share their thoughts and work together to make this program better." Deborah agreed, and they quickly began planning the forum. Jamal was determined to ensure that everyone felt valued and included in the mentorship process. The community forum was held the following week, and Jamal arrived early to set up. As participants began to fill the room, he felt a mix of nerves and anticipation. This was a chance to address concerns and reaffirm their commitment to inclusivity. During the meeting, Jamal opened the floor to discussion, encouraging attendees to voice their thoughts and feelings. He listened intently as people expressed their concerns, acknowledging their perspectives. "I hear you," he said, his voice steady. "We want this program to be a true reflection of our community. We need your input to make it inclusive for everyone." After several productive discussions, the attendees began to propose solutions. Suggestions ranged from ensuring diverse representation among mentors to establishing clear criteria for participation. Jamal felt a surge of hope as he watched the community come together to shape the program's future. By the end of the forum, Jamal felt a sense of camaraderie that had deepened the community's connection. They had not only addressed concerns but had also forged stronger relationships among participants. As the attendees began to disperse, Maria approached Jamal again. "Thank you for listening to us today. I feel like my voice matters." "That's what this is all about," he replied, feeling grateful for her words. "Everyone deserves to be heard." Later that week, Jamal received an email from Deborah praising his handling of the forum. "You turned a potential setback into an opportunity for growth," she wrote. "Keep pushing forward. You're making a real difference." Jamal felt a renewed sense of determination. He knew that challenges would continue to arise, but he was ready to face them head-on, bolstered by the support of his community. As the mentorship program began to flourish, Jamal felt inspired to take it a step further. He envisioned workshops that would not only connect mentors and ments but also provide skills training and professional development opportunities. "Imagine if we could offer resume writing, interview prep, and even networking skills," he told Aisha during one of their brainstorming sessions. "We could create a comprehensive program that equips young professionals with the tools they need to succeed." Aisha's eyes sparkled with excitement. "That's brilliant. We can partner with local businesses to provide resources and even bring in guest speakers from various industries. With their ideas taking shape, Jamal reached out to local companies for support. He was thrilled to find several organizations eager to collaborate, recognizing the value of investing in the next generation of leaders. Months later, the mentorship program culminated in a celebratory event that showcased the achievements of participants. Jamal stood on stage, feeling a mix of pride and gratitude as he looked out at the audience. Today, we celebrate not just the successes of our men's, but the strength of our community, he began, his voice resonating with emotion. This program was born out of a desire for change, and together, we've created something truly special. He shared success stories, highlighting individuals who had secured jobs, internships, and scholarships through the program. The crowd erupted in applause, and Jamal felt a wave of joy wash over him. As the event drew to a close, participants mingled and shared their experiences. Jamal felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. He had not only created a platform for change but had also witnessed the transformation of lives. In the following weeks, Jamal received calls from other organizations interested in replicating the mentorship program in their communities. Each conversation reinforced the impact of their work, and he was filled with a sense of purpose. But with success came new challenges. The demands of the program increased, and Jamal found himself stretched thin. Balancing his responsibilities at the nonprofit, the mentorship program, and his personal life became increasingly difficult. One evening, after a long day, he collapsed onto his couch, feeling drained. Aisha called, sensing his fatigue. "Jamal, I know things are getting hectic. Have you thought about bringing in more help?" "I have, but I'm not sure where to start," he admitted. "I don't want to lose the personal touch we've built with this program." Delegation doesn't mean losing the personal touch. It means empowering others to share in this journey with you, she advised. You've built a strong foundation. Trust that others can help carry it forward. Jamal mulled over her words, realizing she was right. It was time to trust others to contribute to the cause he had nurtured. With Aisha's encouragement, Jamal began reaching out to trusted volunteers and interns from the mentorship program. He organized a meeting, sharing his vision for the program's future and inviting them to take on leadership roles. "I want to empower you all to take ownership of this program," he said, excitement bubbling within him. "Your voices matter, and your experiences are invaluable. Together, we can continue to expand our reach and impact." The volunteers responded enthusiastically, eager to contribute. As they brainstormed ideas and divided responsibilities, Jamal felt a sense of relief wash over him. He was no longer alone in this endeavor, he had built a team that was passionate about the mission. As the mentorship program continued to grow, Jamal took time to reflect on his journey. He thought back to the struggles he had faced and the doubts that had plagued him. Each challenge had shaped him, teaching him valuable lessons about resilience, community, and the power of shared experiences. One evening, he decided to write down his reflections. "I've learned that change is a collective effort," he penned. "It's about lifting each other up and creating a space where every voice is valued." As he finished writing, Jamal felt a sense of completion wash over him. He had grown not only as a leader but as a person, and he wanted to share that growth with others. Inspired by his reflections, Jamal decided to create a blog for the mentorship program. He envisioned it as a space where he could share personal stories, insights from participants, and resources for both ments and mentors. His first post would be about his journey, highlighting the challenges he had faced and the lessons learned along the way. As he typed, memories flooded his mind, the initial frustrations, the painful rejections, the triumphs of the community, and the warmth of newfound connections. He poured his heart into the post, aiming to inspire others who might feel lost or discouraged. "Change is not just about fighting against injustice," he wrote. "It's about building a community that thrives on support, understanding, and shared goals. We all have the power to uplift one another." When he published the post, he was surprised by the immediate response. Comments flooded in from readers expressing gratitude for his honesty and vulnerability. Many shared their own stories of struggle and success, creating a dialogue that felt electric and alive. The success of the blog encouraged Jamal to host regular online discussions where participants could share their stories and insights. Each session brought new voices to the forefront, and Jamal was amazed by the wealth of experiences within the community. During one session, a young man named Kevin shared his story of overcoming obstacles in his job search. "I faced a lot of rejection because of my background," he admitted. "But finding this program helped me realize I wasn't alone. It pushed me to keep going." As Kevin spoke, Jamal could see the impact of his words on the others in the room. The atmosphere was charged with encouragement, and people began sharing tips and resources to help one another. After the session, Jamal received a message from Kevin, thanking him for creating such a supportive environment. "You're making a difference," he wrote. "I feel like I have a family now." With the growing success of the program, Jamal realized they needed to formalize their structure. While the community spirit was strong, having a clear framework would help them reach more individuals and measure their impact effectively. He gathered his team to brainstorm ideas for a more structured approach. "We need to define our goals and establish a clear framework for how we operate," he said. "This will help us scale and continue making a difference." They worked late into the night, developing a mission statement, setting measurable goals, and creating a comprehensive guide for mentors and ments. By the end of the meeting, Jamal felt invigorated. They had transformed chaos into clarity, and he was ready to take the program to new heights. As the program gained momentum, Jamal reached out to other organizations to collaborate on larger initiatives. He proposed a series of joint workshops with various nonprofits focused on employment equity, sharing their resources and expertise to create a more extensive support system. During one of the meetings with a partner organization, Jamal pitched the idea. "Together, we can create a robust series of workshops that empower individuals from diverse backgrounds. This is about more than just one program, it's about changing the landscape for everyone." The response was overwhelmingly positive, and they quickly began planning a series of community events that would bring together resources and experts to address employment challenges faced by marginalized communities. Months later, Jamal's vision came to fruition with a large community event celebrating diversity and empowerment. The event featured guest speakers, interactive workshops, and a job fair connecting attendees with potential employers committed to diversity. As he looked around the bustling venue filled with energy and hope, Jamal felt a sense of fulfillment. He witnessed individuals connecting, networking, and sharing stories, reinforcing the belief that change was possible when people came together. During his closing remarks, he spoke from the heart. "This event is proof that we are stronger together. Every connection made today is a step toward dismantling barriers and creating opportunities for everyone. Let's keep this momentum going." The applause that followed was deafening, and Jamal felt tears of joy welling up in his eyes. He had turned his struggles into a catalyst for change, inspiring a community to rise and support one another. In the weeks following the event, the mentorship program expanded further, attracting media attention and interest from local businesses eager to collaborate. Jamal was approached by several organizations that wanted to replicate their model in different communities, recognizing its potential for widespread impact. As the momentum built, Jamal found himself reflecting on the journey. He had faced adversity, but he had also found purpose in the struggle. He realized that his experiences had not just shaped him, they had created a ripple effect, empowering others to take action. One evening, Aisha joined him for coffee at their favorite cafe. "You've built something incredible, Jamal. You've not only changed your life but the lives of so many others," she said, pride evident in her voice. "I couldn't have done it without you," he replied, smiling. "You were my anchor through all of this. Together, we've created a legacy." As the program flourished, Jamal began to envision the next steps. He wanted to create a scholarship fund to support young people pursuing higher education, ensuring that financial barriers wouldn't prevent them from achieving their dreams. He reached out to potential donors and community leaders, passionately sharing his vision. By investing in our youth, we're investing in the future of our community, he explained during a fundraising event. Together, we can create opportunities that change lives. The response was overwhelming, with several organizations stepping forward to contribute. Jamal felt a wave of gratitude wash over him as he realized the impact of their collective efforts. With the scholarship fund established, Jamal organized an annual celebration to honor recipients and recognize their achievements. The event became a powerful reminder of the program's impact, showcasing the stories of individuals who had overcome obstacles and achieved their goals. During one of the celebrations, a scholarship recipient named Tasha took the stage. "Receiving this scholarship has changed my life," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "It's not just financial support, it's a reminder that my dreams are valid and achievable. Thank you for believing in us." Jamal felt a deep sense of pride as he watched Tasha's speech resonate with the audience. Her success was a testament to the program's impact, reinforcing his belief that they were creating meaningful change. In the quiet moments following the celebration, Jamal took time to reflect on his journey. He had faced challenges that felt insurmountable, yet he had persevered. The community he had built was a source of strength, and their stories fueled his passion. He decided to document his experiences in a book, hoping to inspire others facing similar struggles. He wanted to share the lessons he had learned about resilience, community, and the power of vulnerability. As he wrote, Jamal felt a sense of catharsis. He realized that sharing his story could help others feel less alone and empower them to pursue their dreams, no matter the obstacles. With the book nearing completion, Jamal began to think about the future. The mentorship program had grown beyond his wildest dreams, and he knew it was time to expand his vision even further. He considered ways to reach underserved communities outside his local area, ensuring that the principles of empowerment and connection could benefit even more individuals. His goal was to create a model that could be replicated nationwide. One evening, he shared his ideas with Aisha. "Imagine if we could create a network of mentorship programs across the country, all working together to lift each other up," he said, excitement radiating from him. Aisha's eyes sparkled. "That's ambitious, but I believe you can do it. You've built something powerful here, and the world needs to see it." As the months passed, Jamal's book was published, and its message resonated with readers everywhere. He began speaking at events and conferences, sharing his story and inspiring others to take action in their communities. The mentorship program continued to thrive, expanding its reach and impact. Jamal worked tirelessly to develop partnerships with organizations committed to social justice, ensuring that the mission of empowerment remained at the forefront of their efforts. In the final chapters of his journey, Jamal stood before a crowd at a national conference, addressing hundreds of eager faces. "This isn't just my story, it's ours. Every one of you has the power to create change. Let's lift each other up, support one another, and continue to fight for a world where everyone has the opportunity to succeed." The room erupted in applause, and Jamal felt an overwhelming sense of belonging. He had not only transformed his own life but had sparked a movement that would continue long after he stepped off the stage.